My name is Robert. I'm a co-CEO of AX Semantics, and I'm very happy to have Karim from Syndigo here and Damien from Cipher Sports, and I'll let it up to them to introduce themselves. So, Karim, you can go first.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Karim Iskandar, and I head up the international businesses for Syndigo, and based in London. Quick kind of summary of Syndigo. Syndigo is all about quality content around product information. Not only do we act as a single source of truth as either a PIM or MDM system, but we are worldwide leaders in syndication of content out to endpoints like retailers, marketplaces, and e-commerce platforms like Magento. And when you think about syndication, you can think about GDSN content, you can think about A+ enhanced content, which we'll talk a little bit about today, or you can talk about core content. But that's a bit of a summary, and we work, we work with AX Semantics on, optimizing that content and contextualizing it. And we'll talk a little bit about some examples there today, but I'm very, very pleased to be here today. Thank you.
And hi everyone, my name is Damien Souness. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Cipher Sports Technology Group. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. We operate across Australia and also the United States. My role really is to drive growth and create value for the business. We have a number of B2C brands, notably diamonds.com, which you can see here on my hoodie, and statsinsider.com.au in Australia. Both of those sites are underpinned by predictive analytics that we run for all major pro and college sports, both in the US and globally. And we work with AX Semantics to bring a lot of the data that we have built in-house. We bring that to life through our partnership with AX Semantics, and we're able to create editorial content, which I'll go into in a little bit more detail on this call today.
Hey, thanks for the intro. So, Karim, do you want to introduce a little bit what's your understanding about this topic of content as a top-line driver? This is like a very abstract topic, but what's your summary on that? What do you think? What contributes most to that?
Yeah, I think it's a quite broad brush question, but I think it starts off with customer expectations have changed. I think if you think about COVID the last couple of years, a lot of buying decisions have shifted to the internet, and people are expecting better quality information. They're expected to make decisions on more complex items. A really good example is Weber, the grill company. I think it's pretty well known across all countries. And with our technology, we kind of help them improve add to cart by 25%. And that's through providing what's called enhanced content. So interactive content above the fold that gives people a sense of key features around the product. And as a result of that technology, we know when someone is actually making that buying decision. So I think that's number one. And I think if you look at how customer expectations have changed, I think, they look, we did some research a year ago, right after COVID, and, 62% of customers are using search engine for product information. The average cart abandonment rate is still high at 69%. So how can brands reduce that? 9 out of 10 consumers are reading ratings and reviews when it comes to many categories. And 90% of companies, consumers care about the photo quality, and that does influence the buying decision. So those are all things. And I think, and again, in summary, how if your brand's out there, how are you actually presenting yourself online is extremely important in today's world. So that hopefully gets us going a little bit, Robert.
Yeah, I think that's a good concise summary of what happened. So I think we'll do a longer discussion about this, but I want to give the slot to Damien to show a little bit about what he does with content, because he's actually one of those rare individuals who are actually earning money with content, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think content's quite interesting. Content, I think, for so long and by many is considered just words on a page, but it's become so much broader than that now. And I think we're in this industry looking for opportunities and ways that we can grow that, but grow that at scale, but while maintaining accuracy. And obviously, from our perspective here as a data-driven business, accuracy is highly important. So I'll just do a quick screen share to take you through one of the examples that we've used. You can see that now just in terms of the left-hand side there. I've mentioned Cipher Sports Technology Group and Diamonds and Stats Insider as the two brands. But if we're looking at Diamonds specifically, when we're talking about content, we're looking at ways to engage the American sports betting market. We've got 430,000 monthly users at the moment, nearly 2.5 million page views, which has been growing over the past couple of years. But we're a little bit different in a sense that we're not selling a particular product, but we do have affiliate deals with all of the major sports books in the US. So those predictive analytics that I mentioned earlier, we use those to run simulations of major events. We then compare them to the best odds that are available, the results of those simulations, the best odds that are available in the market. And we're trying to find value for sports fans and sports bettors. So we've got a lot of content, but then how we kind of repurpose that and bring that to life is really important as well. So in terms of automating that and our work with AX semantics in particular, on the left-hand side, we've got an example. The Boston Celtics there as well. I didn't think about that.
I saw that, Damien. I saw that. Yeah. Thanks for rubbing it in, Damien. Cheers.
It's a great coincidence, although obviously the Heat prevailed in this one. But we have these predictive analytics on the left-hand side of the page here that you can see. So for every NBA, NFL, NHL, MLB, we cover 17,000 events per year. And we cover them in a similar fashion that you see here, where we're looking at a predicted final score, the spread, the over-under, the money line, projected box score. So we're looking at how many points a player will score, how many rebounds, how many assists they'll have. It's quite a high level of detail. And what we've been able to do through the use of automation is create really engaging editorial content that we publish as news articles on Diamonds and also Stats Insider, where we're able to add editorial context, I guess you could say, to this data and bring it to life in a way that's easier to understand and consume, but importantly, and we touched on SEO a little bit earlier, has really high search appeal. So this strategy has been really successful for us. And when I talk about growing at scale, this has allowed us to cover 17,000 events per year in a similar way, to the point where we're covering the Yankees versus the Red Sox in the same way that we're covering a college basketball game or a college football game or, you name it, we've got the same level of coverage. So whilst the Yankees and Red Sox, for example, is super competitive, all the major outlets are covering it, we've actually found there's quite an opportunity in the games that have less coverage because we are able to cover them to such a high standard. So it's a little bit of a different twist on automation and how to automate content, but one that's allowed us to grow a community, as I said, of like-minded people who are looking for this information. They come and we use this automated content to introduce them to what we do and then encourage them to stay on the site for longer. Ultimately, then, we're hoping that they'll convert to one of our affiliate partners. But what's really important and what we've been able to achieve here is increasing that top of funnel to expose us to as many people as possible and as many eyeballs as possible that will be interested in the information that we have available.
So, yeah, go ahead.
No, just a couple more examples there. I mentioned the 17,000 events per year. And not only do we do the game preview that we featured just a minute ago, but we've now started to grow that out across different types of data that we have available to us, which has proved really successful as well.
Damien, it's a shame. 15 years ago, I used to gamble on American sports quite a bit, and I wish this technology was available 15 years ago. It looks amazing what you're doing.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's the US is changing rapidly. Sports betting only became legal. There was obviously ways to do it beyond that, but it only became legal over the past few years with the repeal of PASPA. And since then, it's taking over state by state in the US, and it's a massive opportunity for us in a growing market that's still immature in many ways, but shows plenty of potential and upside as well.
And I mean, you obviously are producing a lot of content with those 70,000 events. But do you have, and you mentioned it actually, that you build a community around it. So what's the user's perspective on that kind of content when you're publishing?
Yeah, the feedback's been really positive, and through the metrics that we have available to us as well that we measure, we can see the difference that it's made in terms of growing our audience. And that's really the purpose of this particular type of content, is to grow our audience, expose us to as many people as possible. And we know that people are landing on the site for the first time when they're viewing one of these articles. And we know over the past couple of years that these articles have an average time on page of just over 4 minutes. So not only are people landing on the site, but they're staying with us for a considerable amount of time, reading through and digesting all of the information that's available to them. And then we're seeing we're starting to see some real improvement now as well in terms of our bounce rate and keeping people on the site through the other content that we present to them.
Okay, so since you mentioned the metrics, you are using those to actually objectify your content quality, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do that probably in a number of different ways. I mean, we're looking at the user metrics in terms of how much traffic we're bringing to the site, how long they're staying on the site for, where they're clicking. But we're also looking, importantly, at our search performance as well, and having an understanding of our average position and click-through rate. And I think one of the things that we've noticed the most over the past couple of years that we've been working on this is how the smallest change can sometimes have a really significant impact, particularly through SEO. So that's been a really interesting learning. And it's kind of, it's a good thing and a bad thing in a way, because it's a good thing because we are seeing such significant change, but the attention to detail that you're required to go to try and find that edge, or that next kind of, that next quick win, or that next win becomes really important. So what we have here is a great team who've really bought into what we're doing. Across the business, everyone has been incredibly supportive. And whilst we started off with an idea of how we wanted it to work, the buy-in from the business through the understanding of the metrics and then just looking at performance, allows us to be able to continue to refine this and evolve this. It's not static at any point. It's constantly in motion, which I like about it. It's kind of, it's a really exciting challenge for us, and it's quite unique as well.
How is the team or the users organized? How big is it? How many people are using it, or something like that? Internally? Yeah.
Yeah, internally, it started off as I said, it started off as an idea. And then we kind of discussed that with a few people within the business. We decided, yeah, this is the right fit for us. So whilst we had that idea, we didn't really know how we were going to get to that endpoint of, hey, this is what it's going to look like on the site. And our head of infrastructure, I think, has been incredibly patient over the past couple of years as we've worked through this, and as has the rest of the business, because there's been a lot of test and learn. It wasn't just kind of, we didn't just flick a switch and away we went. It's very much been a work in progress to understand all of the different integrations. We run a number of different CMSs, so those are obviously not the same and present their own challenges and intricacies. And then we've looked at the data that we have available to us. How can that be repurposed? So we've got a team of data scientists and analysts within the business who have then bought into the project to understand how the data can be presented in a way that's, I guess, AX friendly in terms of what we're trying to create. So we've got that to a point now where we've got a dedicated resource who's based in the UK. So I know he's watching this one today. And he basically manages the maintenance of our projects, but also the creation of the new ideas that we have. So the buy-in from the business has made a huge difference. And to get it to this point now where we've got a dedicated resource just allows us to grow this even further and faster.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting, Damien, what you talk through kind of click-through rates and all the analytics that are out there now, because I think the power for both retailers and brands is higher than ever, right? There are scraping technologies on many retailer websites, which can measure things like share of search and ratings and reviews and pricing comparisons against maybe competitive products, et cetera. So the technology has advanced tremendously the last couple of years, which I think is number one. And then number two is, if you look at it, there is a lot around analytics around how people are behaving on a product page, and what is that moment when they actually add a product to the cart. And incredibly powerful if you can get those analytics. We see in some categories, actually on average, over thousands of our clients, that we can increase conversions up to 39% based on where content lies and what type of content and the sophistication of that. So I just want to kind of build on the fact that you're looking at analytics through a certain way yourself in your business, but as a technology provider, we also are, which I think is fascinating.
And there's so many different ways, right? It's kind of it's how long is a piece of string in many ways. So you've kind of got to identify the metrics that matter to you and that are important for you. I think there's two parts to it, or there's two battles, right? There's the click that we're trying to pull in from Google or one of the other search providers. So that how we present there is incredibly important, but then it's what happens when that user lands on the site and the action that we're trying to get them to take. So we spend a lot of time focusing on both, and you're trying to find the balance, which is a really interesting battle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Karim, we obviously have a very successful organization here with Damien. So if you look at your customers, and you probably have some more successful ones and less successful ones in terms of content output, without naming and blaming people, what do you think are success factors for those teams that produce that content to actually drive good content, impactful content?
Yeah, let me answer that through kind of maybe two lenses, Robert. So I think, first of all, again, what's important is learning around what content works and what doesn't. And, I think any good platform should have, A/B testing involved, where you can try two different concepts side by side and see what's going to drive, the most conversion and ultimately ascertain the best quality content. If I also look at it through a lens of working, with you, we're working, as with a really large DIY retailer that's over 13 billion in revenue and has over 500,000 products. And what we see is the products need descriptions and selling content, and they have to be really adapted to the retailer's tone and the customer experience objectives across those geographies and languages. And what AX Semantics and Syndigo can do is enable the customer to generate over 100,000 dynamic content rules to enhance customer and brand experience, help drive more conversions, ultimately generate more revenue, which is really important. And we can enhance the content quality through automation and learning algorithms. So again, the more that we do, the more that we can learn, and it becomes almost a snowball effect where we can actually make the system more productive, for the retailer. And we do this, at really low cost and with high effectiveness. So I guess answering it kind of through a couple different lenses, Robert.
Yeah, sure. And what you've seen is the most detrimental factors in organization that keeps them from having good content? It's also a question I'll put up to Damien. You are going first.
It's by far it's quality of content, right? Quality of content means inaccurate, incomplete data, hurts both brands and retailer, and it is constant. And I think what prevails still in a lot of countries, when you think about it, take a step back. This is about the efficient transfer of product data from brands to retailers, right? So it's an ecosystem that is heavily reliant on each other. And one of the biggest pain points retailers have is the quality of data that they receive from their suppliers, right? And I think the large companies like P&G and Nestle and Reckitt and Sony and all that, they have good quality data teams, and it's less pervasive. But that new emerging company that's launching a product that might only have 10 or 12 SKUs, they don't know how to provide data, really. So really, really challenging there. But quality of data, biggest pain point, absolutely.
And for Damien, if you look back at the last few years, months, what's the thing that you would rather have learned earlier than later?
There's many things, but I think, look, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but to one of the earlier points, this is constantly evolving and we're constantly learning. So look, there's lots of things I would have loved to have known in terms of, I said at the start, we had this idea, but we didn't know how to get there. I would have loved to have known how to get there. Would have saved us a lot of time and a lot of pain and a lot of kind of repeating different steps. But that was all part of the process, and we learned and we're better for that. So there's not necessarily anything that I would change, but that's really because we've just embraced this willingness to constantly learn and constantly evolve. So that will never stop. And I think that, as quality is absolutely the key to success, but the willingness and I guess alignment internally to make sure that, hey, this is constantly moving and we need to stay ahead of the game, because otherwise you will get left behind. So I think for me, that's really important as well.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a really open team there with people not too much, because what we sometimes see is that people are, especially editors, feel threatened by automation and then kind of like block the innovation. But it sounds like really you covered all those angles and you have a good team there.
Yeah, we do. I can't speak highly enough of our team. And I think, our writers initially, I wasn't sure how they would react to this idea of automating this much content. But what it's done is free them up to write about other topics. So rather than them getting too caught up in, the Yankees Red Sox preview, to use those two teams as an example again, they can start to look more broadly beyond that, start to look at topics that, will appeal to our audience that don't necessarily rely on automation. And it gives them an opportunity to think a little bit differently and also test and learn. So from their perspective, while perhaps a little bit unsure in the beginning, they now understand the potential here and the opportunity that it presents for them as well.
And where are you going with in terms of scale and content? I mean, you just mentioned that you have a 4-minute timer page, which is really a lot for people in the web to nowadays. I mean, I probably can't concentrate that long. But, so what are you going for? Are you going longer content, more of them, different ones? What do you have in mind? What are your ideas?
Yeah, we're looking at different streams of content. So we started off with the game previews that I featured on the slide a little bit earlier. But now we're looking at other opportunities. NBA First Basket is an example where we look at the probabilities of which players are most likely to score the first basket on any particular day during the NBA season. Obviously, we're in the finals now, so the number of games per day has reduced to 1 on days that there are games. But on days where there's a high number of games on the slate, we've got the data that can kind of simplify what people are looking for and try and make that as easy to understand as possible. Undoubtedly, one of our challenges through predictive analytics is making it easy for people to understand what we're actually talking about and where the value is for them. So trying to find content ideas that appeal to more of a mainstream audience is really important for us. So NBA First Basket is a good example, but as we look ahead to the NFL season, which is a huge driver of traffic and interest in the US, we'll be looking at things and opportunities around touchdown scorers and player props, which we know have. We know we're not naive enough to think that we're the only people that are automating content in this space, but I guess where we will back ourselves in is around the quality that we spoke about earlier, and being able to produce the best quality using really accurate and reliable data that we think sets us apart from our competition.
Yeah, so you have, I'm not a big sports person, but what's your take on, classical media and journalistic are always about post-game reports, and you have a totally different take on the topic. Is there any overlap that you see or moving in that space as well, or?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like we don't really look back on any of our B2C sites at all. So you won't find any match reports. You won't find any reaction from the players or the coaches or anything like that. We're constantly looking ahead. We're constantly looking for the next opportunity. I think there is a shift, and certainly, as we talk about the growth of the online betting industry in the US, there's certainly more and more of an interest in what's ahead and where some of the opportunities are to bet on. So we're really conscious of being involved in those conversations. And I think there's a smaller opportunity, and one that I really like is, we operate in the predictive analytics industry, but that doesn't necessarily mean we get it, right 100% of the time. Quite often there's upsets. Prem, I'm sorry, but the Miami Heat against the Celtics was obviously a really good example of that, where, quite often I think there's a good opportunity to look at the data and the content that we've produced prior to a game and then reflect on that after the game to see, well, okay, if the Heat were only a 10% chance of winning this game, you know what, they've defied the odds and they've actually ended up beating the Celtics. I think there's something in that in terms of how we make data more relatable and mainstream.
Okay. And the second thing that I saw when you had that nice on the slide where it was scrolling for ages. So this kind of like long form content. Karim, if you compare that to how product content has evolved over the last years, you mentioned A+ content, so maybe you could give an impression what that is and why that is relevant.
Yeah, I think, Robert, I think when we think about content, we're thinking about it on e-commerce websites and the product page, right? So when everyone goes to a product page, they will see an image and maybe a price, obviously a title for the product, and maybe some, quick bullet points on the major aspects of the product. But when you look at categories like televisions, anything in the electronics area, anything around babies, because it's a new experience. What happens is if you scroll down, you'll see additional content. So those could be images, they could be how-to guides, they could be videos, they could be interactive it could be a tour of a product where you can hover around some hotspots and get a magnified view of the benefits of that part of the product. And so what we're seeing is that people are scrolling down, spending more time on the product page. And as a result, brands are looking at creating a lot of that content and curating it to optimize the experience. What's important there is sometimes people are rushed too. So how do you create that experience at what we call the hero image, at that, right at the top, where maybe the hotspots are up at the top, where they'll immediately see it and interact with the product. Because some people are time pressed. Time is, for them, might not scroll. But for others, they may want to spend 10 minutes on a page because it's a big buying decision. They're about to buy, a 1,200 euro television, and they want to do that. And what we're seeing is with those larger purchases, if you have tremendously powerful content, they will make that buying decision, instead of, going into store, right? So that's a big dynamic that has changed. So it's called enhanced content. It's called A+ content. Amazon's doing it quite a bit, obviously, too. You'll also get things like comparisons of like products. So let me give you a good example. Oral-B, major brand for Procter & Gamble, because Oral-B toothbrushes come in many flavors, and you can spend 20 pounds on an Oral-B toothbrush, or you can spend 400 pounds now on an Oral-B toothbrush. So it's this like black onyx thing. Check it out. It's very crazy, but it's like you can spend a lot of money. It's the same thing with Dyson, by the way. Dyson has a hair dryer where you can spend 350 pounds on. Luckily, my wife doesn't have it. Hopefully your wives don't have it either. But if they do, they deserve it, right? Happy wife, happy life. So yeah, back to my point is you can do product comparisons within your own range to say, listen, by upgrading to this product, these are the extra benefits you get, and they're called comparison charts. So those are all examples of content that's driving buying decisions and revenue for both brands and retailers.
And how do you see teams in organizations actually cope with that kind of demand? I mean, if you're selling a 400-pound toothbrush, or I'm actually aware of the Dyson vacuums, which also tremendously expensive. But people or brands are putting more and more products on the market, and you have, on the other hand, I mean, I'm not sure how it is in the UK, but at least here in Europe, on the continent, people are not allowed basically to hire unrelentlessly even more people. So you have to scale without hiring more headcount. So how do teams cope? How do people feel in that kind of situation?
Yeah, so I think if you can create common approaches around the content where it's repeatable, that's very, very important because it's scalable. The larger brands, especially if they built the right business case within their organizations, also hire agencies to help with that content. There are also organizations like ourselves that can curate and do that content at very, very low cost if they have either offshore or nearshore capabilities. So there's a variety of choices around that. And I think the first and foremost thing is establish the business case. Because if the business case is there, for increased sales around more effective content, then it becomes much more achievable, et cetera.
Yeah, business cases are always about the revenue that you drive and not just saving money. Because I've once met a CFO who said, if every of the software vendors that I talk to fulfills the promises of cost saving, I could be alone here with just the CEO, and the business would still be running, which it isn't. So before we go back to the last round of questions, for the audience and attendees, please, if you have any question, put them in the chat. Just a reminder there. So that is a side thing. So Damien, do you have any other sources of where you could publish your content? Have you thought about sending the content out to affiliates or other platforms, or is there any kind of ideas on your end on how to drive that you reuse the content that you have?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the focus initially has been on our owned properties and how we can grow those. Diamonds itself has only been around for just over a couple of years. So we're starting from scratch in what has been, or what is a really competitive market in the US. We're talking about sports in the US, and trying to make an impact as quickly as possible. So we've initially focused on, our own brands and trying to grow them. And whilst affiliate marketing is at the core of what we do, we see ourselves a little bit different in that we are trying to grow this community of like-minded people, particularly in the US, who are learning about sports betting for the first time and trying to understand what it all means and what's going on. That's been a real priority for us. So, we touched on some of those numbers earlier around the monthly users. We want to grow that to 1 million monthly users as quickly as possible, which we think will be a kind of really key milestone. At that point, we'll start to think, a little bit more broadly about where else this content could go and who might be interested in this content as well. Because, as I said, the quality is so important, and we really believe in what we've been able to create in terms of the predictive analytics that underpin what we do and the websites that we've built. So, growing that, whether it's through a PR campaign or affiliate, working with affiliates or other partners, I think there's plenty of opportunities there as well.
Okay, yeah, sounds like you have some things still ahead of you. That's nice. So, but I like the quote that you had earlier with not just words on a page. So I'll put that up onto our marketing team to use that as our new slogan. I really love that. Right. And combine it with Karim's repeatable is scalable, which I do love as well. It hits some pieces of my heart. So I'm out of questions. Any questions that you have for each other, or for me, or for the audience? Well, last comments.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I've said a good number, but to summarize, I think don't underestimate the power of quality content, number one. I think it's crucial in today's world, but also augmented content to really, really help with conversions, et cetera. Because I think the dynamic, there used to be this dynamic of, I forgot the when you go into store, you do your research, and then you buy online, right? So, and I think today now people aren't bothering to go in store because brands are taking things to the, brands and suppliers are taking things to the next level. So I don't really that really is a change in behavior that everyone should be thinking about as a big evolvement. So I would summarize with that. And I think, if you can make your content smarter and automated through technologies like AX semantics, I think you're also, taking things to the next level. So it's all about that, it comes down to customer experience, customer expectations. We talked a bit about the metrics of those at the beginning. So that's a bit of a summary point from my end, Robert.
Yeah, I think I would just add to that. Just don't underestimate how broad content can be and how varied it can be. And don't be afraid, I guess, to push the boundaries of what's perhaps been considered traditional previously, with new ideas and new ways of creating content through automation and using what you have available to you to create new content that hasn't existed previously. That's really been the difference for us, is to look at what we had available to us, think differently about how it can be used, and come up with a way that's been able to achieve some goals for us in terms of growing our audience. If you can find that sweet spot, not only is it rewarding, but it's exciting and challenging as well, which is always a nice position to be in.
No, actually, yeah, I think that do make sense. Content is far broader than it has been in the last decade or something. We actually got a question from the audience. So Azadeh, I hope I pronounced that correctly, is asking how can you evaluate the contents after using these, and which are factors and metrics to determine that? So I think Damien, you go ahead.
Yeah, I think, and it's very interesting because our businesses are different, myself and Damien, and thinking about content is different through the different lenses. We're more focused on actual physical products, and I think Damien's more focused around experience and services, but in an industry that's probably making the most money in the world, right? Because people love their betting, right? But I think when we think about the product detail page, there are metrics like viewable impressions, like clicks to add to cart, how long people dwell on a certain aspect of the website. It's called dwelling time. And there's all kinds of powerful analytics around those that we know, if someone is on a product page for more than 2.5 minutes, then they typically will convert at over 85%. So these are kind of, there's a lot of metrics, again, back to what's out there that can help you drive better sales. So that's a little bit from our lens, which is more product focused. Over to you, Damien.
Yeah, I think as you touched on, Karim, it very much depends on the type of content that you're publishing. But for us, as I mentioned, as a relatively new website, first and foremost, we're trying to grow our audience, and we're trying to have an understanding of where that traffic is coming from, whether it's coming through search, social media, email, et cetera, et cetera. So in terms of the content that we're creating using AX semantics, we're firstly just trying to understand, kind of comes back to those two parts that I said earlier. We're trying to understand first with search, what our average position is for a particular piece of content, what our click-through rate is, and then ultimately, the impressions and the clicks that we're bringing through to the site. Once users land on the site, we're trying to understand how long they're spending on the particular page, if they're clicking through to any other pages or our promotional offers within all of our content. Probably should have made mention of this, but in many ways it goes without saying, we have all of our affiliate offers that sit within the content that we're producing. So all of the information is relevant to the affiliate partners that we have. For example, if we're looking at a particular game, we'll encourage you to bet with BetMGM or DraftKings or FanDuel because they have the best available odds in the market. So it's not that we're exclusive to one partner or anything along those lines, but we use the technology that we have available to come up with the best value. But at the same time, we have affiliate deals with those partners. So we're able to commercialize that audience as well. So that's naturally a really important part of it, beyond the standard web metrics that we would look at. Once we get beyond that point, we're very much trying to understand what's converting, where it's converting, at what level, what partners, et cetera, et cetera. So can go into quite a significant level of detail at that point. But first and foremost, we want to grow that top of funnel, grow that audience as much as we can. And then I guess the next challenge after that is how do we commercialize them, and how do we convert them ultimately through to one of our partners.
Yeah, thanks for those questions, or if there's anything more. I don't see anything in the chat. So I'll start thanking you, Karim and Damien, for your time and the insights, and nice for bringing those numbers. I love that insight into real customer projects. People are always reluctant to share, or at least. So for all the attendees, you got some really good business insights there. So thank you for your time. And I wish everyone a nice afternoon or a nice late evening and a good night. For Damien, yeah, thanks.